Hello, welcome to Card College. My name is Roberto Giobbi, and it will be my great pleasure to be your coach during this course in professional sleight of hand card magic. Now, playing cards is the most versatile instrument in the whole realm of conjuring. You can interpret any effect with it. You can make cards appear, disappear, transform them, transpose them, tear them up, restore them, and interpret all kinds of mental effects with them. They are really like the piano in music. The absolutely fantastic thing about playing cards is that it's an everyday common object. Everybody knows it all over the world. And like a pencil, most people, they will write a shopping list. But in the hands of an artist and of a poet, they will make some art with it. And we use a common everyday object like the playing cards, and with our skill and our talent and with our creativity and the help, of course, of a very important thing, with the imagination of the audience, we're creating memorable, wonderful moments. Now let me say a few things how to use these DVDs. As you know, they are based on my Card College Volume 1 and Volume 2. There's 500 pages, and it's absolutely impossible to go into depth of details on this video instruction series as you'll find them in the books. So I advise that when you find a technique or an effect, to go back to the book and get to the details. However, there is one thing that no book, even the best book in magic in the whole world of conjuring, can do, and that's to show you that things are feasible. The feasibility, yes, that will give you the confidence that you can learn this too. You can see the timing, you see the pauses, you can see the importance of the look. All the things that are very hard to convey through the page of the book. So that's the advantage of these DVDs, and that's what you're going to see. Now, I suggest that you hold ready a notebook and make notes of everything you see. Because this is a course not only about tricks and effects and presentations. I constructed this as a course about the structure of card magic. I would like to show you the working principle and the concepts that make magic work. That is the big frame into which I have put many tricks, effects, presentations and theories. Now, you recognize, or when I mention one of these concepts and principles, write them down in your notebook, because these are the things you will be able to use outside of the specific techniques and the specific tricks. You will be able to apply them in other disciplines of magic as well. And now, I wish you a lot of pleasure and much success in Card College. I'd like to briefly mention three things which are going to be important for all our work. First, the surface on which we're working. Second, the tools we're using, the playing cards. And third, the hands. Now, as a surface, I advise using some kind of surface like a felt or a velour, and there are specially made maps that you can obtain at magic dealers. Generally, I would advise using as big as mat as possible. Everything that you are going to do is going to look much more generous. There are also smaller mats. There's a smaller mat, even smaller mats, and I think you shouldn't be performing on small mats like that, except if you take this on a vacation to practice. Now, the second thing, which is very important, is of course the playing cards. You're going to wonder, what kind of cards should I be using? Now, I advise that you use generally poker size playing cards. The two sizes, one is the so-called poker size, which are a little bit wider, and the so-called bridge size. As you can see, one is a little narrower, and there are several reasons why I would say we should work with poker size cards. First of all, the poker size cards handle very nicely. Also, if you practice, if you can do everything with poker size card and you ever have to use the bridge size cards, everything will be as easy or even easier, while it won't be the case vice versa. Second of all, the design is usually nicer. Look, usually aesthetics is also a question of proportions, and because of the size, the poker size card just has the better proportion. You will find they are cards with different finishes, They are given different names. Usually you find them on the side of a card case: linen finish, air cushion finish, plastic coated finish, whatever. There is not a general rule what is better or worse. I would say try different brands of cards, try different coatings, and see what feels better for you. Also, you will find so-called jumbo index cards, which at first you might think, oh, that's a clever idea. People can see the cards better, especially if they're farther away. Now, personally, I don't like jumbo index cards. I think that we are used to playing cards, and we are used to seeing the whole image, the whole gestalt of the card. Yes, people recognize the whole, and not just they're not looking for individual features of the card. They recognize the whole of the card, and this does not correspond to what most people, at least, have in their memory as being a normal card. So first of all, it's not true that they're going to recognize this more easily. I think they have to look harder to see it because it doesn't conform to what they're used to. And second, since it looks funny and unusual, they might think they are special cards. Then let me say a few things about the hands. There are large hands with small hands. There are people who have moist skins or dry skins. The anatomy of each hand is different. Now you're going to see that in this course I'm going to give precise instructions of how to use the hands, how to touch the card at specific points. I'm going to give very specific fingering instructions. Now be aware that you will have to change occasionally the way you hold or you do a slide. So do what Professor Vernon always advised: use your head. Understand the principle of a slide, of a trick, and if you have to, adapt it to your own hand. Also, you will find that some people have dry hands. There are products to apply. If you have two dry hands, for instance, this Sort Quick is something you find easily in the United States. It's something you apply. Bank tellers apply this to count money. Yes, there are different creams. If you have dry hands, you might want to research some products that solve this problem. On the contrary, you have your moist skin, you will find creams that help you avoid this. Of course, it goes by itself that you always work with clean and well-groomed hands and fingernails. And to finish this off, I'd like to quote a famous German philosopher, Cull, who said, "The hand is the extension of the mind, and the cards, the instrument, is the extension of the hand." So everything we are doing with the cards, every slide we are performing, every effect we are performing for our audience carries a bit of ourselves, of not our hand only, of our mind in it. And I think being at all times aware of that will give everything we do more dignity. And it's a step towards a more artistic card magic. Let's start with two basic grips. One is the dealing position, and the other one, the so-called end grip, also referred to in the literature as the biddle grip or biddle position. There are a few things that are important with the dealing grip. First of all, the left forefinger. The left forefinger is at the outer end and it controls the deck. If you didn't have it there, the cards would slide out of the hand. The second thing, the deck is not deep in the hand like that. You don't know clutching the deck. So it's sort of floating very lightly in the hand. Yes? Do you remember one metaphor that the deck is like a bird? Hold it firmly enough so it doesn't fly away, but don't hold it too much, otherwise you crush it. I'd like to draw your attention to this little space that the deck, you don't hold it like this, you hold it up like that. And the sign that you're doing this correctly is that the outer phalanges of the fingers will show just about halfway. The thumb can be held either lightly on top of the deck like this, on the side, or best of all, if it's possible, just like that. Because in body language, which is a language we should all learn, this says, I have nothing to hide. It's all very honest. Now, the best grip of all is to let the deck on the table. As often as possible, when it is not necessary, rather than holding it in the hand, doing whatever can be done. If it's not necessary to hold it, then put it on the table. In many presentations, the spectators at the end will say, "How did he do that? He didn't even touch the cards." So that's the basic dealing position. There are some slight variations. First of all, there's the elevated dealing position. Now, if you transfer the deck from normal to elevated dealing position, that's how it looks. Now, it might look to you as if it slides, as if the deck slides along all the fingers. What it really does, I'm going to turn a little bit so you can appreciate this, is the right side remains in contact with the fingers. It's just like a hinge, like the page of a book. And the left side will slide along the left thumb. So here is how the transfer looks. And that's a move that's going to be very useful a little bit later. And a further variation is a so-called straddle grip. That's when you move the little finger to the inner end. It will allow us to have further control with some specific techniques. The end grip, I distinguish between two kinds of end grip. The open end grip, which means we are holding the deck like this and leaving as much of the deck visible. Whenever it's possible, use an open end grip. Sometimes we will need to protect certain things like gaps in the deck, jogs or whatever. So we're holding the deck in a closed end grip. Here again, make sure that the fingers are at about an angle of 45 degrees, which still will allow a maximum of the surface to be visible, as opposed to holding the pack like that, which obscures everything and just makes it obvious that we are hiding something. We will occasionally have to square the pack. So here is how to do it in different ways. We do the standard square up, which is starting in dealing position. The right hand takes over, the left fingers start to square the sides, then the right fingers square the ends. You can do the same by elevating the deck to elevated dealing position, doing exactly the same thing and then lowering it back. Now, another way of doing it that combines very nicely with some techniques we're going to look at later is the all-around square up. The all-around square up looks like this. It turns the deck 180 degrees. You start up by picking up an end grip, and now the deck rotates on its face on the fingernail of the forefinger. We will have to cut the deck in different ways. Now, one way, the most efficient, fastest way, is just a cut in the hands. A cut in the hands looks very simple, just a small detail to make it look more elegant. When you transfer the top packet to the bottom, you will have the left fingers come into your way. So in order to avoid that and still have a perfect control over the left packet, it is pinched at its outer left corner with the thumb and the base of the forefinger. So these three fingers can open up easily. The pack is put under, the deck is squared and lowered back. Then there is another category of cut where we cut from the hand to the table. Now it can be done with some determination. It can be done with lightness and more elegance. Now if you put the deck or the part of the deck on the table like that, rather than putting it directly like this on the table, yes, release the card just a half an inch or so before it touches the tabletop. Now look, the difference if you do it like that or if you did it like that. It just conveys lightness, and that's what we are looking for at all time. Hand the card with much sensibility and lightness. Then we have a different technique which is used in many other procedures, which is the swing cut. The swing cut goes like that. Now here are the details of the handling. Once the right hand takes it in end grip, only the ring finger and the middle finger control the deck together with the thumb. The right forefinger lifts up about half the top portion. Now the first difficulty is getting that corner out. So you lift and go to the left. These fingers, and turn them a little bit, they bow a little bit outwards like this. If after a few attempts you will be able to do that. Now, the upper portion is clipped by the left hand and the right hand dropped on top. So that looks very elegant. That's the swing cut. There is when a cut from the table to the table, when the deck is already on the table, go like that. And there is the cut from the table to the hand, when the deck starts out on the table and ends up in the hand, like this. You'll often be required to spread the deck between the hands for different reasons, to have a card selected, to have a card replaced, to look for a specific card, and so on. There's a way of doing it where at all times the cards are under your control. Whichever technique we execute, the first aim is to have all the cards at all times under our control. So here's the way to do it. When the deck starts in dealing position, the little finger goes to the back, so we have a straddle grip to start with, and the left thumb pushes the card into the right hand, which receives them also in a straddle grip. Now, the left little fingers and the right little finger is very important because it will avoid that the cards fall out of our hands, especially if you have to hold the deck a little bit up to show the cards, for instance, like this. Or also, it will allow us to have a wider spread. Now, here is how the spread works. It is a combination between pushing the cards and taking them in the right hand, and then walking the fingers. So if I put this in a horizontal position, you can see that. Try just to get the feeling of how this looks, and then try just to imitate that. Maybe you look at this in slow motion again, and you see. It's important that the cards flow regularly. You can have breaks, of course, rhythms. You say, so I would like you to take the card and you take a card, but make sure the cards are under your control at all times. Now, a specific application of spreading the deck between the hands is when we want to remove a specific group of cards. Let's say we want to remove the 4 aces from the pack. So here's how to proceed. We start spreading the cards between the hands until we reach the first ace. We lower the right side, clip the ace at its inner right corner and push up. Proceed up to the next ace, go back, go up, proceed to the next ace, go up, proceed to the next ace, go up. We call this action dribbling the cards. Dribbling the cards, you can dribble them in your hand, or even better, if possible, dribble them on the table. Here's the action. It's a question of hold and pressures. If you hold the deck in end grip, like this, press lightly with the forefinger, and just practice releasing them individually, if you can. Now, at the beginning, they will come as a block, because you keep on practicing at regular intervals, you will be able to do it more or less like this, and that's more than sufficient. It's very nice to dribble them in the hand and to make sure that they are at all time under control and don't fall out of your hand. It's a good idea to receive the cards in a straddle position like this. If you want to obtain a very regular and very nice looking dribble, you may want to use that grip, which is a diagonal grip of a ring finger and the thumb. Now, this will allow you to release each card practically individually. However, the hand looks a little bit more unnatural, so I advise using most of the time this kind of handling whenever you dribble the cards. Many times you will be required to deal cards. There are various ways the cards can be dealt. This we refer to as the draw method, as in draw poker, because the cards are being dealt face down. Now look, this is the grip of the card. At the moment, it's totally unimportant how you deal. You can do it in any way, but for later techniques that will look just like you're dealing cards but doing some secret move, it's important to have a precise grip. So it's good to learn this to begin with right here. We hold the card like this with 2 fingers, the forefinger lightly on the outer end, the ring finger and the little finger are curled lightly into the palm and touch with their back the right side of the card. Now this will allow for other techniques, for instance, to do a sail deal by simply keeping the card in exactly the position we have just seen, and now extending the ring finger and the little finger, and this will produce a sail. That's a very light and elegant way of dealing cards. Now another way of dealing cards, which is going to be very helpful in many presentations, is to deal them stud ways. That's like a stud poker. It's you can do it either by turning them this way, so you start out exactly with the same grip as you did in the draw method, but then turn the hand inward and turn the card face up. Now that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is going with the thumb on the face and turn them face up like that. But the nice feature of this is that you can produce this snap, and you can also sail them from here, and it looks like that. Now whenever we deal the cards, at least in most applications, we want to deal them away from the deck rather than towards the deck, because in many applications of the deal some tricky action is going to happen in this hand, and so we lead the hand away. We make this a main action, and this is going to be a secondary action that gets much less attention. Here's a very important technique we're going to use almost throughout every trick. It's called a break. A break is a separation between 2 packets or under a specific number of cards. Let me first show you how to obtain a break and how to keep a break in the center of the pack. Now I'm going to turn around like this. The deck is in dealing position. We riffle up about half the pack, and the thumb keeps the pressure, so we can get a nice square riffle. And at this point, the left little finger moves in a little bit, it just presses a little bit in, so that when we release the upper cards, just the pad of the little finger gets caught in between the packets. Now we call this a flesh break, or generally a left little finger break. Now whenever you read that, it's in the literature, it's not putting in a little finger like that, so it's just catching the flesh of the little finger, just the pad of the little finger. Now let's look at a few details. In order to protect the break from the right side, we can move the fingers like this, and as you will see, it's very important to keep the break not like so, but to move the little finger slightly over the inner right corner of the deck. So by moving it like that and moving the other fingers alongside the little finger, the gap will be very effectively be protected. Now another thing to take care of is that the packets don't separate here, so that the separation becomes visible to the spectators who look from the front. So in order to do that, well, you have to practice a little bit, but also to know exactly the pressures. There is a pressure that goes from the thumb, yes, from this part of the outer joint, of the outer phalange of the thumb, to the pad of the forefinger. So if you imagine it's it's like a nail going through here that controls the deck. Now you have a very similar grip that looks like that, but in reality it's this pressure that controls the cards. And now if you obtain a break at the back, it's invisible, it's impossible to see, and still you have a very effective and quite large and safe separation. Now, many times we will have to obtain a break under the top card of the deck, and here's how we can proceed. Now, first is a two-handed method. Two-handed method, the right hand goes over the deck for some reason. Maybe we dribble the card, now we go and square up the deck. Maybe we spread the deck between the hands and we use both hands naturally to square the deck. Whichever reason, the right hand is now in this position, and you lift up lightly on the card, press the little finger on the side as we did before, and instead of obtaining the break and holding it in the center, it's being held like this. The very important thing, or two things. One is, when rather than lifting up, the danger is lifting up the top card too much is a visible action. So it's a good idea to just try to keep the top card as steady as possible and turn the left hand slightly inward with the rest of the cards. So what that does is that all the cards will be lowered while the top card practically remains steady, and above all it remains flat. Yes? We want by all means to avoid this thing, which looks like this ski jump. Also, in order for the right thumb to securely and easily pick up the top card, you want to bevel the deck slightly. So I'm going to exaggerate this for clarity here. The cards are beveled like this, which means that if the thumb afterwards pulls up like this, it will be easy to get 1, 2, 3, 4 cards. And remember, you're not lifting up, but you're lowering the deck. So you have a very natural looking movement. Let's look at the one-handed method to pick up a break beneath the top card. And the most obvious way of doing it is just to push lightly, and I'm going to exaggerate this, and then draw the card back. And as the card is drawn back, the left fingers close up like this. They open up when I push the card. They close up like that. And in the closing up, the left little finger, the pad of the left little finger, is being caught between the top card and the rest of the pack. Now, a much more subtle way of doing that is doing it like the great Vernon suggested of doing it. Pull the thumb a little bit further down, use the forefinger as a pivoting point, and lightly push the card over. Now you'll see that because of the pivot, the card will angle. It won't slide parallel to the other cards, but it will angle, and that will be enough. Look, there's a far more than enough to just close in and get a break under the top card. Now, well, of course, it needs to be covered, whichever technique you use. So this is covered by making a gesture, by saying, "Sir, would you just like us to assist you? Would you please name a number between 1 and 10, or whatever action that you will see in the context of performance of a trick." The little finger break is a very safe technique to hold a break, especially if you have to hold it for a longer time, like 10 seconds or 15 seconds. A way to protect the little finger break is to tilt the pack like so. So rather than holding it like this, which would allow the audience, maybe especially a spectator on your far right, to catch a glimpse of it, just tilt it 45 degrees, and still you can hold the fingers in a very natural position and protect it. Now, another way of handling the break is to transfer the break to another finger. Most of the time, we will be transferring it to the thumb. So when the right hand comes over the deck and seizes it in end grip, the right thumb can take the break, put back the back where it's going to be taken over by the little finger. And let me show you from this side. So if I have the little finger break, the right hand can come over at any time, and the thumb takes over. The deck can be moved, can be put back any time, and the little finger break be regained. Now, if it's too small, you can briefly lift on the upper packet and do a very gentle, light riffling motion, which will allow to enlarge the break and re-obtain in a safe way a flesh break by the little finger pad. There are many ways to keep a separation between two packets. We've seen the break. Now let's look at the step. The step is just, I'm going to exaggerate for you, a configuration like that, which is the intuitive term, a part is stepped. Let's see how this can be done deceptively. We start from a break that is being held usually by the little finger, like this. And now, let me stay like this. The little finger closes down. This results in the break being lost, but at the same time, the upper packet being shifted into an oblique position. I'm going to exaggerate this a little bit like that, and you obtain more or less this configuration. So let's look at it again. The little finger break closes down, and you get into configuration. Now that's an interesting configuration because if we press on this line as well as on that line, the step configuration will be maintained, even if it's very slight optically. With the sense of touch, it's very easy to find again. There's a way to be very secure about the step, and that's to accompany with the right hand the shift of the upper packet. So the easiest way is when we have a break like this, the right hand comes over, the deck holds it lightly like this. Now the left little finger closes down and the upper packet is accompanied by the right hand. Now as you can see, it's almost invisible if you look from this angle. Now if I turn around, you will be able to see what really happens. The left little finger starts the step, but the right hand accompanies as the packet a little bit like this, which will make for a very clear and safe step. Now once we are here, we can do different things. Again, these two fingers can press as much as they like. They can even riffle. You can lift from this side, and the step configuration will always be maintained very clearly. Now to further cover it or to delay it in time, we can do a squaring action. Of course, it's not really square because the fingers just slide very lightly along the right side. We can go into an all-around square-up action, which really looks very convincing. I mean, not too much, yes? I'm exaggerating to make the point that something like this will be more than enough, and still the configuration is maintained. A further way to delay it is to simply put it on the table, and as the right hand leaves, just drag to the right a few cards, just very lightly. So the card will be in like this on the table, and let me turn it over a little bit, because you will be able to see they have quite a well discernible step, which is very well covered. Anybody who will look at the deck will just catch an unsquared pack of cards. Now we pick it up again in this line, take it over with these two fingers again in this line that doesn't alter the configuration of the packets, and then the little finger simply lightly presses down, which enables it to reobtain the break, transfer it to the thumb, or do whatever is necessary for the trick you're going to perform. A very effective way to display the cards for a selection or to show the deck is to use a so-called ribbon spread. The ribbon spread looks like this: face down, face up. And it's very easy to obtain. You start out with the deck in end grip and the right forefinger on the left side. The right moves in an arc, like this. And when you hold the deck like this, the forefinger just opens slightly, and with its opening, lets the card slide out. At the same time, the forefinger presses down. So that's how it looks. So after the deck has been spread, it needs to be picked up, which can happen by joining both hands like this. The left hand, this looks very neat and very elegant, and the deck ends up again in dealing position. Or it can be done with just one hand. Now when you spread the cards and you do it this way, the indices will face towards you. That's an advantage if you want to look for a specific card, or if there is an arrangement you don't want the audience to detect very quickly. The indexes standing on their heads make this more difficult. If it is important that the audience sees the indexes in a clear and unmistakable way, now either you do it with your left hand, as I just did like this, or you change the grip like so and spread the card like this. You're going to obtain a very nice ribbon spread. Now there are different ways you can ribbon spread them. You can ribbon spread them diagonally, you can ribbon spread them in a straight way, you can even form letters with it. You can obtain any kind of configurations, and later on we're going to see actually a very nice card trick performed with an unusual configuration of a ribbon spread. We're going to use the card case occasionally, so let's have a brief look at the card case. The correct way of preparing a card case, most brand of cards will have a flap like this that has two slits on the sides. So it's important to open it all the way there. Press is really open, you will have side flaps, and you have a thumb notch. Now look what this is good for. It makes for a very elegant way of taking the deck out of the card case. So the hand seizes the deck like this. You open it with one movement thanks to the thumb notch. You can touch the flap, just open it up. The fingers bend the flap backwards like this. And it's very easy thanks to the thumb notch on one side and this extra fold on the other side to pull the deck about halfway out without the hand leaving the deck. Pivot the deck like so on the fingernail. Extract the deck where it falls directly into your left hand. So let me show you how to take out the cards in one smooth movement. Ladies and gentlemen, a deck of 52 playing cards. The overhand shuffle is the shuffle we're going to use most. Here's how an overhand shuffle looks. Let's look at the microstructure of the slide. First of all, the grip of the right hand. Hold the deck like this. Watch that these fingers, they are not at right angles, they are at about a 45-degree angles. These three fingers are held together. The forefinger lightly on top like this, the thumb at the same angle. We're going to call this chopping off a packet of cards, chopping off a block of cards. And we're going to call each chopping off of a packet, we're calling this a shuffle movement. So a regular overhand shuffle will have like 5 to 6 shuffle movements like so. The grip of the left hand is very important. Here's how the cards are received after they come to the left hand. Look at this very carefully. Very important, the left forefinger, it avoids that the cards fall out of the hand from the front. At the back you have the left little finger. It will later be able to control cards which are injogged. We call injogged cards, cards that protrude from the inner end. Now the way the block is pulled off, it's a combination of letting it drop. Some people will overhand shuffle like that by simply dropping packets. Others will pull off the packets with the thumb. Now I think the neatest way to do it is to have a combination. So have a very light grip, just enough to hold the cards, but so that you can start dropping a packet and pull off with the left thumb to obtain this action. Now the packet snugly fits between the forefinger and the middle finger. These fingers, they're not held too far down, they're not held too far up, they're just about comfortably resting against the face of the packet. Now let's look at the macro structure. There's a great tendency, especially when we start executing specific techniques with the overhand shuffle, to become very tight. So the first thing is loosen the elbows, get the elbows away from the body. The second thing, get the deck away from the body. There is a tendency to protect the deck because you are going to do some kind of slide. So there is an intuitive tendency to go towards the body to protect the slide. So do the contrary, go away from the body. So take the elbows out, have about this distance from the body, and also move the hands in a nice semi-circle fashion, like this. So it's much more elegant than doing very straight movements like this. You know, I'm exaggerating the point. This looks much more elegant. Basically, it's only the right hand that moves, but the left hand will just go a little bit to soften the movement, like so. Now, there are many techniques we are going to use and which look to the audience just like a simple overhand shuffle. Now, the first is the run. We call the run when we peel individual cards. So let's do a simple run instead of chopping off a block, a series of just take off one card, another card. So if you hear or you read, run 5 cards and shuffle off the rest of the pack, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's how it would look. Or you can shuffle few blocks, then run individual cards and shuffle off. This is the easiest way to control the top card, because in just one shuffle, you run the first card and shuffle off, it's going to the bottom. Now you can run it back to the top by simply doing an overhand shuffle and at the end peeling individual cards. You might run into certain difficulties when you want to run cards. For instance, that the cards don't come off very cleanly, or that you're not sure that you can run the number of cards you need. So a way to overcome this is to change the angle. So rather than holding them at this flat angle, you change the angle of that so you can exert more pressure. The left thumb can exert more pressure, and it's a safer way to peel the cards. Now, when you try to shuffle the bottom card to the top, you will find that it's not easy to feel when the last card arrives, which is a little bit an awkward moment. So to overcome that, here is a way of doing it. Let's assume we have the 10 of spades, which we run to the bottom in the first shuffle, and then we want to run it back. So the little finger moves on the face and pushes the face card just slightly towards the back. This will enable the right thumb to hit the card like so, push forward, and obtain a break. Now, if you start an overhand shuffle, you can just drop at any point the cards up to the break and drop the last card individually on top. Let's look at how to control the top stock of the deck. We call a stock a group of cards we want to retain in its order and in the same position on top of the deck. Now here is how a top stock control looks. It's an in-jog shuffle. Apparently the whole deck has been shuffled twice. Nonetheless, the 4 aces are back on the top. Now for this we need a so-called in-jog shuffle. We call a card that protrudes from the deck a jogged card. So that's an in-jog card if it comes out of the inner end, an out-jog card if it comes out of the outer end, or a side-jog card if it comes out of the side of the deck. To do this, we start by chopping off at least the top block of the cards. In this case, at least 4 cards. We run the next card in this exactly the same plane, and the left thumb pulls the card inward. I'm going to exaggerate this a little bit for clarity. Afterwards, we're just going to in-jog it that much. And then we shuffle off. This results in this configuration. When the right hand seizes the pack to go into the second shuffle, here's what happens. In a slight diagonal way, look, a diagonal movement, because this is going to give more way. The distance we go through is longer if the movement is diagonal than if it is horizontal. So we go like this, and we obtain a real nice and clear break. Now the whole deck is controlled by the right hand. So here you see is a reason why these fingers need to be together. It's very nicely covered. we do the overhand shuffle and shuffle to the break. When the break is reached, the cards above the break are dropped, and in combination with the pull of the left thumb, and the rest of the cards dropped on top. This brings the 4 aces back to the top. Now let's look at this again from this angle. The important thing is to avoid moving the hand inward when we peel and in-jog the card. There is a tendency intuitively to do this, then go back, in-jog the card, and go back and shuffle off. Now this has to be fought. Avoid moving the right hand and do it this way. Chop off the block, peel off the card, pull it inward with the left thumb, and follow always the shuffle in exactly the same plane. Pick up the break, shuffle off to the break, drop the rest on top. A very deceptive and efficient way of controlling the top stock. Let's look at how to control the bottom stock. We put the 4 aces on the bottom this time. Now we use a similar in-jog technique, but even easier. We shuffle off until we reach about the bottom stock, just leave more cards, twice as many, just to be sure. And rather than throwing the whole pack on top, here's what happens. The fingers of the right hand release the cards, but keep the bottom few cards back. It doesn't matter if it's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 in this case. And when the cards are brought down, they are brought down at an angle, like so, which makes them in-jog like this. Now here you can see the importance of the left little finger, because with the top stock control and the bottom stock control, in all in-jog techniques, the left little finger, yes, feels the in-jogged card. So you don't have to look. We obtain a break below the in-jogged card, shuffle off in the first shuffle movement all the cards above the break, and shuffle off, bringing back the 4 aces to the bottom. And in all these shuffles, of course, it's very important that we don't look at the cards. Now this holds true for practically every slide we execute. Yes, we have to practice so long as to be able to know exactly what the hands do, and at all times maintain eye contact with our audience, say something interesting, ask a question, do something, explain something, and as we do that, perform the necessary slide. So as I'm looking at you here, perform the slide, aces kept on the bottom. And here is a simplified way of maintaining the order and position of the bottom cards. So look, here's how it looks. Very efficient way, one shuffle, the cards remain the bottom. So what we do is very simple. You extend your left ring finger over the upper side and just block at least the cards you want to control. So the right hand lifts up some cards except the bottom block. That's a very efficient way. You have to practice a little bit to get that feeling to extend the ring finger. At the beginning you will think your finger is too short, but that's not true. Regardless of the anatomy of your hand, you can shift your fingers around to make the ring finger grab, or you can even use both fingers depending on how long your fingers are. You can go like this and grab the card. And look how effortless and elegant this shuffle looks. All time you just keep the bottom stock on the bottom. You know, I've been doing magic now for 35 years. And I think I haven't missed a day where I didn't handle playing cards. It's my favorite instrument. So you get to learn things about playing cards that are unusual and other people might not know, you know. And still there are things which surprise myself, you know, I find even scare me sometimes. Well, let me demonstrate. There's a pack of poker cards. Yes, you play poker, blackjack, bridge, gin rummy. Mm-hmm. 2 cards. Okay, very good. Now, I'm going to ask you to play a very simple game. Yes, you're going to... Okay. Good. Shuffle and cut. Good? Yeah. You happy? Mm-hmm. Good. John, I'm going to ask you, please cut the pack about in half. So we have 2 equal halves. Very good. Now, did I influence you where you cut, or could I know which card you cut to?
No.
No, of course not. Now, Caitlin, I want to ask you, please, would you, I'm not going to touch it, cut about half about that. Very good. And John, another half.
Right.
Now, again, I can't know where you cut to.
Right.
Yes. Now let's see. Let's see what the information is that the cards are giving us by just, oh, it's a 2. This is an 8. This is a 4 and a 5. Now, impossible to know that we were cutting to these cards, right?
Right.
Do you recognize a pattern? Tell you something? Well, they're all face up, yes, for instance. But that's not that. No, the 2 is telling us in a coded way, you know, what we have to do. 2. We have to... Oh, you can't, no, you don't speak the language of the cards. That's why I'm telling you, you know. You have to count 2 cards, because it's a 2. Okay. And you need to give the other ones one because of the law of compensation, which I have invented.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And the 8, of course, tells you that you have to...
Count 8 cards.
Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it doesn't matter. You just distribute the cards because that's the law.
4.
4, of course. So I do 1, 2, 3, 4. I do exactly what I'm saying. Is that correct? Yes. And of course here, John, this is
5.
Without the shadow of a doubt, it's a 5. So it's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And because of the law of compensation, you get this. Now, does that mean anything?
No.
For the moment, no, it doesn't. No, it can't, you know. But the cards are giving instruction in a very specific way. Or do you cut them haphazardly? Look, that's why we come up with an ace. That's a very good card. That's a curious thing. This is not a race. And look at that. It's another ace. And, oh, sometimes the cards make a mistake. But not today. It's the other ace. Very good.
I have no idea what you just did.
Me neither.
Well, I'm glad it worked, you know. Well, I know when I do this, people say, "Yeah, well, can you do these fancy things in card games, you know?" And
Yeah.
so, well, let me show you a little bit how you could cheat card cheats. Good. Let me put these back so they are lost, hopefully. Yes. Good. And we're going to play a game of poker. It's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Draw poker. What do you play?
Texas Hold'em.
Oh,
I know.
professional.
Yeah. Well, just on an iPod. I don't know how to do with people.
Okay. Well, let's just play. How many? 3, 4, maybe 5. Because of the law of disparity, which I also invented.
Okay.
Yes. It is going. So go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm the 5th. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that correct? Yes. So why am I doing everything correctly to the rules?
I
Good.
assume,
Yes.
yeah.
And we have another round. You agree?
Yeah.
Good. So we have 5 hands of 5 cards each. So maybe I ask you, because maybe there's a little intuition. Caitlin, choose any one of these 5 hands, whichever pleases you. Go ahead. Okay. Now fan them just for you. Yes, and I'm going to try to show you how gamblers, you know, control cards. It's very important, of course, to get the good cards afterwards. Otherwise, you know, if you can't do that, you can't get a good hand.
Right.
So the most difficult to control is a central card. Should you pull it up a little bit? And can you remember that? Is it a good card or? Oh?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Lucky. Please don't forget it, otherwise we don't have a finale. Good.
Okay.
Put it back. Please. Thank you very much. We're going to lose the hand, yes, back into the pack. And look, now comes the manipulation. You see it? Yes, I practiced many years.
Right.
I already control the card, and I'm going to deal it at the same spot. The exact card you are now only have in your mind. Keep it in mind. Don't forget it. Yes. Good. In the hand, John, you were telling me. I mean, is it the first, the second, the third, the fourth, or the fourth hand you like?
That I want to take?
Yeah. No, I'm going to deal it in the hand you say.
Oh.
First, second, third.
I would like it to be in the 5th hand.
5th?
Yes.
Yes. Good. 5th hand. Very difficult. We're going to try to do that. So, good. Look. 1, 2, 3, 5.
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4. Definitely. In the same position. In the center. Caitlin, correct?
Yeah.
Did you notice anything strange?
Not a thing.
Impossible to notice. Impossible. Now look, you decided on the hand.
Right.
You just thinking of this card, which you looked at, you saw. So it should, if it's true what I'm telling you, it should be exactly back in this, because it was a central card, yes? You picked. What was the card?
A king of spades.
King. Oh, that's a good one.
That's a great card.
How do you do that?
I've practiced a long time. However, I must tell you something, you know. I mean, that's very neat. But if you're in a real game, you don't win with that. You need a good hand.
Right.
Well, that's why I always deal myself a royal flush.
Oh.
Is that good enough?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you want lessons in card match?
I don't want to play poker with you.
Okay. I would like to explain these first two routines, Belshoe, Aces, Revisited, and Subconscious Poker together, because they form a very nice synergy. Now, each one uses a little setup, and since we need to have a setup in the first trick, we might as well combine it with a second trick that also uses a little setup. So here is the cards. We first need the cards of a royal flush, so it's a 10, Jack, Queen, and King. So the royal flush in spade minus the ace goes on top. The 4 aces go on top of the royal flush. We add 2 indifferent cards and a 5 that goes on top. So here's our setup. A 5, 2 indifferent cards, the 4 aces in any order, and the 4 cards of the royal flush also in any order. Doesn't need to be in a specific order, just the 4 cards. Okay, so here we go. We start with Belshoe aces, which is a trick invented by a very little known magician, Steve Belshoe, published in the 30s, with a very clever idea of Richard Flourishes. They start out by doing an in-jog shuffle, retaining the order and the position of the top stock. Right? The spectator is going to cut the deck into 4 packets. So to make sure that the 4 packets are approximately equal, a good procedure is to ask the spectator first to cut about half the pack and then cut each half again in half. This guarantees that the packets are more or less the same. Of course, very important each time the spectator cuts to emphasize that you couldn't have known what card is going to cut and what card is on top. Now comes a very nice touch by Richard Flourishes. We have 3 indifferent cards the spectator really cut to, and we have the top card, the originally top card, which is the 5 of diamonds. So remember, there are 2 indifferent cards now here, followed by the aces and the royal flush, which you're going to need in the next trick, Subconscious Poker. So, here's a very nice justification for the procedure, which in the older versions was always a little bit, difficult to explain because you had to do some things which didn't really have a reason. Now here, we deal 4 cards because the cards tell us to deal 4 cards. And I justify the dealing of 1 card on top of each other packet because I say, well, that's because of the law of compensation or whatever fits your style, but it can be a funny line or something serious. Now, when we have a picture card, well, either can count 10. In this particular case, I do have enough cards. You know, you can estimate it very easily. Or if you think you don't have enough cards, you know, because the picture cards count 10, you can spell the card as I did in the presentation. In this case, I can do King, K-I-N-G, and then distribute a card on each of the other packets. Same thing for this packet, 1, 2, 3, 4, and distribute the card on each of the other packets. Now what happens here doesn't really matter. The important thing is that in this process 3 cards go on top of our setup, which makes that the 3 cards add up to the 2 which were already there, which makes a total of 5. So I get rid now of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards. These are the 5 indifferent cards. And when I distribute the cards on top of the packets, well, what I'm doing is actually distributing the 3 aces. I bring the 4th back. So the only thing left to do is to reveal that each packet has an ace on top. It's a beautiful little trick, and it's quite hard to see through. Now at the end of that, you get very nice synergy because we are left with the 4 cards that make the royal flush. So I like to proceed that way and say I'm going to lose the aces, which I do on these 3 aces, and the last one, well, I just put it more or less at the top as long as it goes into somewhere into the 4 spade cards that form the royal flush. So I can lose them. And now for subconscious poker. Subconscious poker is a very nice idea by a gentleman called Joseph K. Schmidt. He's a famous illustrator of magic books. And, well, here's how this piece goes. The royal flush starts on top of the deck. And I have to add 10 cards. That's where we can use the run, which we just learned in the previous technical chapter. Now, in order to run 10 cards is a little bit long. And so a good idea is to split it in 2 shuffle actions. So here's what I do. I will run 5 cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I drop the rest of the packet, retain the bottom few cards, and just in-jog them. And immediately I pick up a break beneath the in-jog and shuffle off to the break, which brings the 5 indifferent cards to the top, yes, followed by the royal flush. So I repeat this procedure, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I end up having 10 indifferent cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes, and the royal flush. Now what happens now, if I deal 5 hands of poker, the 3rd card of each hand has to be a spade card. So here's how we do it. Now there's a problem with all the dealing tricks because it's going to deal 25 cards. It's a potentially boring moment. So how can we solve that? Well, first of all, in the deal, it's a very nice idea by David Malek. Instead of going, out and dealing, doing the movement, half the movement, you just deal them close to yourself. Okay? And at the end, when the cards have been dealt, we push the cards out. So we save time on the dealing. And it's also important that in the dealing itself, sometimes you interrupt the deal, you make a little comment, you look at the spectator, you deal another round, you make another little comment, so to keep the action interesting. Yes? Good. So the center card of each hand is now a spade card, which means that the spectator can now select any one of the hands. It's a free selection. Let's assume he's going for this hand. And I ask him to fan the card and to make it more difficult to manipulate, to remember the central card. In any case, it will always be a spade card, one of the 5 cards from the royal flush. So I gather the cards, and the only thing which matters, it doesn't matter in which order the cards go, but the hand that has the thought of card has to go in the middle. That is 2 hands on the bottom and 2 hands on top. Yes? Everything on top of the balance of the deck, and now I do an overhand false shuffle, an in-jog shuffle, retaining the top 5 times 5, 25 cards. Now, if I redealt the cards now, all the 5 cards from the royal flush, they would fall into the 3rd hand. I guess because they have X card, royal flush card, X card, and then it starts all over again. Now here's a very nice idea by a Scottish magician extraordinaire, Roy Walton. He asks, well, you can choose any of the hands you like. Now if he chooses the 3rd hand, well, you just can deal. If he chooses, for instance, the 2nd hand, you have to take away 1 card. If he chooses the 1st hand, we have to take away 2 cards. Where if he chooses the 4th hand, we have to add 1 card. If he chooses the 5th card, we have to add 2 cards. Now in the presentation, the spectator chooses the 5th hand, which is this one. So in another overhand shuffle, we add 2 cards, we run 2 cards, in-jog the net, shuffle off, pick up the break, and bring the stock back on top. So when I'm dealing the cards now, every 5th card will be a spade card. Go like this. Of course, I don't show it. To make it a little bit more dramatic, I will deal with 2 hands and then deal with 1 hand. That makes it just a little bit intriguing, like this. And at this point, the card the spectator previously has looked at, which was in our case was the Ace of Spades, is in exactly the same position in the center. So we show that, and it's exactly in the hand the spectator chooses. So that's a very good effect. And now before the dramatic curve drops too much, don't let people applaud at this point. Immediately take control of the situation, and that of course an ace alone doesn't help you to win a poker game. You need a good hand to go with the ace, and the best you can turn over is, of course, a royal flush. And a good way to display the cards is in a diagonal order, because in this way the indices will look right from either way you're looking. If you look from the front, you look from the back, and also as an aesthetically more pleasing configuration of the cards. So that's subconscious poker. A shuffle of any type should always be followed by a cut. That's what spectators are used to. We shuffle a deck and we cut it. Now, how it is possible to retain the order of the pack while we are cutting? So let's look at a few false cuts. Actually, one of the best false cuts you can do to retain a small number of cards is a real cut. It's a combination of what we just learned, the in-jog shuffle, and the cut at the break. So let me show you. The deck is shuffled, in-jogging the card, as we learned in the previous chapter. Then a break is formed directly at the in-jogged card and cut to the table, thus bringing the block we wanted to retain back on top. A more sophisticated way of doing it is, rather than just giving it one cut, giving it several cuts. So I pull off a small packet, like a quarter of the pack, in-jog the next card, shuffle off, and now rather than cutting directly at the break, I establish first the break, cut small packets, 3, 4 or 5, and then cut at the break and bring the stock back on top. Now let's look at some proper, simple, direct cuts. The first cut, we call it the optical cut. That's how it looks, and it retains the order of the complete deck. I'm going to put these aces on top, so just to give you an idea. Now in any slide, any type of slide, there is an external and an internal reality, as Arturo de Ascanio called it. There is a way we want our spectators to perceive what we are doing, and that's the external reality. And then that's the internal reality, that's what we are really doing. And it's very important to execute all the slides in a function of the external reality we want to create in the mind of the audience. Because if we don't do that, there is no deception. Now, what we're doing here, we're simulating. First, with every slide, it's important to understand what are we apparently really doing. We are really holding the pack in dealing position after any type of shuffle. We are cutting the top half on the table, and we are following up with the next. That's what we apparently do. What we really do is, rather than taking the top packet, we extract back from the bottom. So here's how it looks. Let me turn the top card face up so you can follow this better. The bottom is pulled out like this to avoid that cards, follow up. Sometimes can happen that you get this configuration to follow. To avoid that, the left forefinger presses back immediately, and the other fingers press forward. So this will allow to always have a perfectly squared packet. For additional deception, this packet is dropped as soon as the right hand puts its packet on the table. And then the cards are left in a slightly unsquared configuration for a few seconds before you go back and square up. The moment you square up, the audience will see this unsquared configuration and remember that it has been really cut. Now, when you do this, really try to imitate the dynamics of the cut, which is that sort of S move. There's a sort of S movement, and you go like that. You can introduce an additional subtlety that was shown to me by Ron Wall. You go like this, you turn it over like that, and you get a little thing. Well, it's a matter of taste. The important thing, it always has to be deceptive. Another false cut I call the swing false cut, because it uses apparently a swing cut. That's what it looks. It really does retain the top card. So we are simulating really a cut like this. In reality, we swing cut the top half like so, go to the table with the other packet, put this packet on top, again in a configuration like this, and square up afterwards. Now let me say something about the eye. It's very important that the moment the cut is executed, you look up. And as soon as the packets have cleared, you look down. So that aids the deception a lot. Here is a concept I would like to introduce, which is, let me clear this off. Look, is that a convincing false cut? The still is on top. So this uses what I call the actio interruptus. It's a principle that can be used in several other sleights. And what it does is you start an action, then interrupt it for some reason, and follow up. So here's how it looks with the swing false cut. We start the swing false cut, but then pretend there is maybe something on the table, or we ask a spectator, come a little bit closer, or please take the pencil, or can I have the card case, anything. We go back and cut at the break, and this really looks like a very convincing cut. There is another false cut from a very old false cut, as the old-timers used to do. It's in a book by Conradi Horster at the end of the 19th century. And here is how it looks. Very deceptive. Let me turn the card face up. We go like this. But since the cards are cut in a different way as they are picked up, the spectator gets confused in the orientation of the packets. So it's a sort of topological illusion. Now, to further aid the deception of this sleight, we can introduce a brief break at this point. As soon as we've give somebody a pencil, or again, do something, or say, come a little bit closer, and then go up, pick it up. So it would look like that. Sir, can I give you this pencil? Thank you very much. Now, please, would you sign whatever? A variation of doing that is cutting from the hand, and then going and picking up the packets, and applying the same ideas that are already exposed. One last false cut technique is called the slip cut. Now the slip cut, that's how it looks. The slip cut does many things. First of all, the technique. I cut off about top packet, but the left thumb, which rests very lightly on the top card, retains it so that it falls on the lower half. So if I do that, the order of the deck is retained, but only the top card is lost somewhere in this order. Now that has its functions if we want to get rid of a card, for instance. If we want to retain the top card on top for whatever reasons, we can do the slip cut on the table. So we do this, replace it, and it's there. If we do this twice, we can retain the exact order of the entire deck without losing a card. So here is how we can do that. We do a slip cut, like so. Apparently replace this square, but really we replace it in a stepped configuration, as we have seen in the first chapter in the basics. The right hand takes it back. We reobtain a break at the step and repeat the slip cut, which brings the deck back in exactly the same order than before. It's a good idea to always follow an overhand shuffle, a riffle shuffle, whatever it is, with a cut. Don't draw attention to it, just do it. And follow it immediately with some kind of action, with some kind of information, or proceed with a trick. so that the audience doesn't have time to analyze what you've been doing. They just perceive the whole of what you did, which is a shuffle and a cut, and then the next thing is introduced. Well, let me show you something unusual, Caitlin and John. I would like to, well, maybe you shuffle the cards. You shuffle? Well, why don't we just, you shuffle half and you shuffle half, there you are. Yeah. Shuffle the cards any way you like, give them a cut, because I'm going to show you, because every person has a personal card. I don't know if you know your personal card or yours. Well, I'm going to show you. Well, it's okay. And I'm going to shuffle them together, if I may. Yes? Mm-hmm. Good. Good. Now, my personal card, just to give you an idea, you know, is a 6 of diamonds. I don't look like the 6 of diamonds? Yes, look, I'm going to put it over here. Now, Caitlin, I don't know you very well, so I have to ask a personal question. Okay, may I?
Yes.
8 of spades. Good. That's enough. You know, don't laugh. I'm going to ask you a personal question.
No.
What's your shoe size?
11 and a half.
That's the American size. Let me calculate this in European. It's Jack of spades. Yes. Okay. Where is it? Does it have a Jack of spades? Oh, here it is. Good. Now, of course, you've shuffled the cards. Yes, remember? Mm-hmm. Each one has shuffled. You shuffled them like that, or you shuffled them with the American way, like this. Yes.
I did that.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Now I'm going to cut to one card, which is this one. Okay. And I'm trying to even more complicated cut, okay? Even more complicated cut. This one. And for you, John, give me a small number. 2, 3, 4, 5. Not too big.
Is 14 too big?
Yeah.
Oh, 2.
2. Well, I mean,
that's too
sure?
small.
No. It's very good. I mean, whatever you want.
I'm happy with
2. 2. Okay. Well, then I just do 1, 2.
Oh, okay.
I'm left. And you go and do that. Now, if it's true that these are your personal cards, I was able, you know, although the deck was shuffled by you, to cut exactly, look, to its mate. Yes, exactly. So, because this worked out, now you know for the rest of your life, your personal card, 8 of spades. John, your personal card, Jack of spades. Hat trick is a nice little trick that illustrates very nicely 3 different kinds of false cuts. So after spectator have shuffled the cards, I take the pack and spread it face up. Immediately as I spread it, I sight, I look at the top card. In this case, it's the 3 of spades. And I say, well, my personal card is the 3 of clubs. Well, so I looking for the 3 of clubs and take it out. As I take it out, I already look at the second card, which in this case is the 7 of diamonds. So I ask some question, or whichever way you would like it, to justify why it should be the card I'm taking out. So whatever the spectator answers, I say it's the 7 of hearts. Okay? And then while I take that out, I already look at the third card. In that case, it's the king of spades, which means that the third card is going to be the king of clubs. So in each case, I take the card that has the same color and the same value than the top 3 cards. So basically what we're going to do, we're going to execute in each phase 1 false cut, different false cuts. So what I like to do is to precede it with a in-jog shuffle, which maintains the order and the location of our top 3 cards. And since I already have the cards in my hand, I can follow immediately with the optical false cut and deal the top card on the first card. Now the deck is already on the table, which leads itself very nicely for the Conradi cut, which is going like this. Yes, insert a little pause and then gather them in the same order, obviously, and deal the top card, which in our case is the 7. Now, the last card is the best one of all. The king is on top. I shuffle off a small packet, in-jog the next card, shuffle off. And when I square the deck, I pick up a break underneath the in-jogged card. Always bring the deck to elevated dealing position and then let it sink down. So I'm now holding a break, yes, above the last card to be cut to. I have a spectator name a small number, so it says, for instance, 5. I cut 1, 2, 3. On the fourth, I cut directly to the break, drop the last on top, and deal the top card, which is the king of spades, on top of king of clubs. The only thing that remains to do is to reveal 1, to reveal 2, add a little dramatic pause before revealing the last one. And that's hat trick. We come to a most important chapter now, that's card controls. The old-time magicians used to say you only need 3 sleights. That's a control, a force, and a palm. Now the control is, as the term says, controlling the selected card of a spectator. Now let's see how to do this with the overhand shuffle. The overhand shuffle control works like that. I shuffle with an overhand technique and ask the spectator, please say stop whenever it pleases you. I give him the card, let's assume it is the 3 of spades. I continue the shuffle, restart it, and have the spectator replace the 3 of spades on top of the shuffled off portion. And now proceed like this. I run 1, 2, 3 cards, in jog the next, and shuffle off. Now form a break at the in jog, bring that back to the top, and the selected card is now forth from the top. Now many applications that will be good, because you can of course bring it to the 5th, the 6th position, or whatever you like, so it's directly in the position you're going to need. Now if you need it at the top or the bottom, there are different ways of getting rid of these 3 cards. Now one way of doing it, using another shuffle. That is, we run 1, 2, 3, 4 cards, in jog the next card, shuffle off, and then go to the break and bring it back on top. Now this can also be performed by using simply a cut. So let's go back where we have 3 cards on top of the selection. We shuffle 1, 2, 3, 4, in jog, and do what we learned in the false cut chapter. We obtain a break underneath the in jog, and now cut several packets, and the last cut will be directly at the break, bringing the card back to the top. In any type of control, one thing is very important. That's to apply what Ron Wall called the degree of freedom that has to be the same when you select the card and when you put it back. There are different degrees of freedoms to have a card selected. For instance, you can say stop, take this card. It's a little degree of freedom. This looks like a little bit more degree of freedom. Or if I say take a card, this is even more degree of freedom because I don't even touch the card. Or I can give the deck to the spectator and say go out of the room and take a card. It's a very high degree of freedom. Or I can simply say think of a card. Now when I take the card back, I can do the same degrees of freedom. I say put the card back here, or I say put it back like this, or put it back here, or I can say put it back when you're outside. Now the idea here is that you don't ask the spectator to select the card outside of the room, and then when he comes back, you take his card and say, put it back here. I mean, that smells. So it's very important that if the technique requires a certain procedure, like here the overhand shuffle, that the way the card is being selected is the same or at least similar. So a way of doing it is either asking him to say stop as I did before, or a little better, to shuffle in the space where the selection is going to take place, then offer the selection. And now go back into this space where you did the shuffle and ask for the card back. Yes? That feels very similar, so that the 2 degrees of freedom are close together. Now let's look at another type of controlling card, the diagonal push-in. In the diagonal push-in, the card is taken, inserted somewhere in the center of the pack, and apparently completely lost in the deck. In reality, you can at any time cut to it and bring it to the top or to the bottom. So let's see how to do that. If you take the deck in dealing position and push with your right hand by pushing in the center of the card, well, any card will just go in. However, if you don't push in the center, let's say you push over here, now here's what's happening. The card goes in at an angle. Same thing, if you push on this side, the card will go in at an angle. So that's the working principle behind diagonal insertion. Go like this. Important that the left thumb protrudes a little bit, yes, like this, over the outer left corner. When the right hand, that should appear like this, pushes the card in, reality is the middle finger that pushes, the left side will hit the thumb. You will have to move away the little finger and the ring finger a little bit. And when we do this, I'm going to exaggerate this a little bit for clarity, you're going to obtain exactly this configuration. Of course, that's covered from the front. On the left, you will have a little corner protruding, and this is protected by the left thumb. That's why it has to be a little bit over the corner. The thumb immediately goes forward, and if you like, you can correct this by pulling on the right outer corner of the card, like so. Now the edge on the left side is completely clean. Now, similar to the step dynamics, there are two lines which will not disturb the configuration of the card in relation to the rest of the deck, which is this line and that line. So you can freely riffle the cards. We can do the fake all around square up, as we've seen in a different context previously. And at any time, we can lower the deck into dealing position, block it with the left thumb, and now push either downwards, which is usually easier, or upward and obtain a break wherever we need it. In this case, let's take a break above. Now it can be cut or shuffled to the top, or you can proceed to the, according to the requirements of the effect you're performing. There are different situations to get into this, because it's very rarely will it be a good procedure to say, please give me the card, I'm going to put it back. You know, that smells again. So here are ways to get around it. We can fan the deck and ask the spectator to put the card back. Now, if we hold the fan like this, and the spectator won't be able to insert it more than a bit, or we pull the fan back, and now we can close the deck and immediately go ourselves into the diagonal pushing. Another way of doing it is holding a fan like this and asking spectator to say stop while we go like this. When he says stop, we can pull up the card so you can better see it. Close the fan, and we're again in position for the diagonal pushing. And yet a third method would be to have the deck spread on the table like this, go over with the finger, pull the card out, ask the spectator to look at it, or to take his card that he has selected from the fan himself, from the ribbon spread himself, and put it back like so. In each case, we have found a way of avoiding taking the card directly from him and pushing it into the deck, which looks a little bit phony and very restricted. Now let's talk about the peak control. It's a very interesting technique that has many uses. Here's how it looks. I would like you to say stop whenever you please. Stop. Look at the card. Don't forget it, it's somewhere inside the pack. We shuffle the deck and give it a cut, and your card has been brought to the bottom. So let's see how to do that. The peak control relies on a particular grip we have on the deck, and on the fact that if you lock the side of the pack like this and you riffle it on this side, not only does it open where the index is, but it opens along the whole right side, which allows the left little finger to obtain a break. The grip is essential. Imagine you have a nail through the deck at this point. Yes? So you have to have this grip. So you're forming a clamp with the outer joint of the thumb and the base of your left forefinger. So this is where it looks as if you held merely the deck in dealing position, but here's where the pressure occurs. And when you riffle like this, the whole side will open up. In order to protect the break that you're going to obtain, the fingers slide all together, and the little finger goes over the right corner here for about half, yes, of its portion, like this. About. So now, when the spectator says stop, simply do the same thing as we've seen with the break at the very beginning of the course. Just press the little finger lightly. Press the little finger lightly, like this. Release the card, and the break will be obtained. The dynamics to follow this up are the following. If you go like this, immediately lift the deck to elevated dealing position, thereby still obtaining retaining the break. Well, let me turn over to show this there. So as soon as the break has been obtained, you can bring the deck to elevated dealing position as we've seen previously, slightly riffle the outer end if you like, not too much, and then lower the deck again to basic dealing position. Now from here on we can even cut to the break or do the post-peak overhand shuffle control, which can be applied to any type of break. In this case, we are assuming that we're holding a break underneath the peaked at 3 of spades. The deck is seized in end grip and now brought into overhand shuffle position. Now to do this, you need a very light grip. You must try this a few times. You take the left little finger over with the right thumb, and now the deck drops by its own weight into overhand shuffle position, which automatically widens the break. Now the left thumb can just take off the cards and the rest shall be shuffled on top. You can immediately follow up by keeping with your ring finger the bottom card and then follow up by any type of force cut we've seen before, for instance like the swing cut, force cut, which delivers the card to the bottom. And the peak can also be done by a spectator rather than doing it by yourself. So you can ask a spectator, please look at the card and just demonstrate how he can open it. And with his forefinger or with his thumb, he will push back a portion. You push against, yes, push against so that the break opens a little bit. He's going to look at the card, and when he releases it, automatically the break will be obtained. It's very important to avoid that the front you can see, the deck splitting or a white line. So the way to do it really depends on the pressure that you have. Remember the nail or the clamp that is controlling this part of the deck. And if you do this correctly, there is no way you can see where a break is held. The peak also allows a control of several cards. Let's look at the two-card control. I will use the little finger and the ring finger to hold the breaks. Now it looks exactly the same way. You have the first spectator say stop at this point. And now I release one card, which is very easy, obtain the break above it and riffle off. I ask a second spectator to say stop and stop a little bit later and keep a break now underneath the card. So I have two breaks which are held with the same technique. Again, just the pad of the little finger and the pad of the ring finger hold very easily discernible breaks. You can cut once at the first break, at the second break, third break. This will deliver the first card to the top, second to the bottom. When you do the peak, you can either hold the deck square and do it like this, almost square, or you can slightly bevel it. Something between this and this will feel all right to you. You'll have to find a way that feels good for you, but usually what I will do is to hold the deck slightly beveled like this. It will make it easy to riffle off the cards. It will also make it easy if you have to drop a card, or you can drop, of course, several cards and pick up the break later. So when you cut afterwards to the break, you will have the card delivered to the position you need to, if it needs to be at second, third, fourth, or fifth position, or whatever. I know there are people who believe that the cards can answer questions. I mean, some trivial questions, but there are people who believe they can answer important questions. Now, I wouldn't subscribe to that. Really, I wouldn't want to say that. But I found they can answer some questions I need to have answered. For instance, I'm going to ask you, Caitlin, take a card, any card. Look at it. Do you like it? If you don't like it, you can change them. You have the veto right. Okay. You can say, you agree? She can have that?
She's happy with
it. Oh, very good. Yeah. Good. You happy?
Yes.
Good. Please remember it. Put it back into the pack. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead. And now I'm going to ask the question, where is the card? What is the card? Well, I have no idea, I swear, it's what the card is. Okay. I'm going to symbolize the question, right?
Okay.
The question is, and normally for a question you use a question mark, right?
Right.
The question is, where is your card? Tell me what your card is.
Ace of hearts.
Ace of hearts. Of course, the question needs a period, right? Mm-hmm. Without the period, the question is solved. Mm-hmm. Ace of hearts. Period. Any questions at this point? Well, the question is a very nice little trick, and it illustrates an application of the overhand shuffle control. So as you could see, the card is shuffled, the card is selected, it's put back. Let's assume it is the 5 of hearts in this case. The 3 cards are shuffled on top, and the next card in-jogged, and then they're brought to the top as explained in the technical section. Now, the reason I'm explaining this little trick, it shows a very important principle, that every card trick, especially a location card trick, is only effective, attractive, if it does have a plot, if it has a plot. And every trick, even if it's a short, quick trick like this one, as the great René Lavant always says in his lectures, every good trick needs to have a prologue. And that's something at the beginning that tickles the attention, says, makes people curious, like the ouverture in the opera. When the music starts, people go, shh, it's going to begin. So the prologue here, this example is saying something about many people believe that cards can answer questions. So since this is something some people believe, some others don't believe, but they've heard about, it arouses the attention. That's the function of the prologue. And then you go through a trick, which is very simple in this case. And this is a very pretty way of finding the card. And you use, this is an unusual application of using the configuration of the cards to get a very nice display. And go back to the presentation part and see how I'm integrating, I'm making this part of the whole little presentation with the period and the timing of revealing the card. And at the end, I said, and if I remove the period, that is the card. Don't forget to have the card announced by the spectator. The spectator has said it's whatever the card was, 6 of hearts or 6 of hearts, period. This is the final word. And then comes what is also important, the prologue. You have the epilogue, which is a short moment that sums the whole thing up. And it can be a little humorous remark. It can be something else, as we will see during the course of different examples. In this case, I say, any questions at this point? Now, that might seem a harmless little moment, but it does fulfill a function, a very important function, and just mention it briefly. You can read this in the theory section of Card College Volume 2. But every magic trick has a moment where there is wonderment and astonishment. And that's a very nice emotional moment. That's the emotional moment we're all going for in the magic, of course. But there is a moment after that of intellectual frustration. As the great master Juan Tamariz once pointed out to me and says, Roberto, every trick at the end causes some kind of intellectual frustration because the spectator goes, how did he do that? How did he do that? And the epilogue can take, as you would say in English, the sting out of it. Yes, it's an amusing little moment that allows the spectator to go through a trick again and just settle emotionally and intellectually. We're going to see other examples during this course. Well, just a second, I'm going to ask you to think of a card. Not yet, not yet. Because people say, oh, that's very nice. Think of a card. I have all the freedom in the world. You know, maybe, otherwise he manipulates the cards.
Right.
I conducted a psychological research in the probabilities of the cards that are being mostly thought of. And I find that most people think of the Ace of Hearts and the Ace of Spades, and the Queen of Hearts and the Seven. So it's very restricted, really. So I don't want you, Caitlin, to act under such restrictions.
Okay.
So here's what I did. Here's a pack with 52 potential thoughts, right? And so first of all, well, we asked John, since you're going to think, you should shuffle up the thoughts, please.
Okay.
Yes, so we don't know which card was where. Thank you very much. You give it a cut. Professional computer gambler.
Yes.
Professional.
I only play cards on
Very good. So here's what we do. I'm going to hold the cards like this. So I'm going to flip them through. And now you can see cards, and you can see, very improbable cards. Like 2 of diamonds or 3 of spades, nobody would normally think.
Right.
Okay? And I'm not going to look into your eyes, because as Socrates said, the eye is the window to the soul. And I don't want to look that deep. Today. So I will look away. And I ask you, Caitlin, you just say stop whenever it pleases you.
Stop.
Okay. Can you see a card here?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, that's going to be the card you must lock in your mind.
Okay.
John, have you got an idea what card Caitlin is looked at or thinking of?
No idea.
You have no idea?
No.
I mean, you can't.
No.
Because she didn't take the card and show it to everybody. She just peeked at the card, so to speak, and now you're thinking. Yes. Okay. Now I'm going to try, I hope, to find out, to read the card she's thinking. And for this, I'm going to show you the thoughts. And the only thing I would like to ask you, don't say anything. Don't move, don't change the expression. But when you see the card coming by, she must think, stop. Okay, you can try, John. You can try and look at her. If you could read when she thinks stop, and of course you must keep a poker face, okay? And I'm not going to look at you, because I'm going to concentrate just listening to your mental voice.
Okay.
Okay? Okay? Now, okay. So it's somewhere in the pack. I have no idea. Very difficult. I don't look. You look at the card. Don't look at me.
Okay.
I don't look at you. But I listen. You haven't yet thought stop. No, I know. Yes, wait. Yet now. Now you thought stop. Yes, is that correct? Yes? And did you see anything? It's difficult. Yes, you had many years of experience. Yes. A red card, 7 of diamonds, you said stop. Is that correct? A penny for your thoughts? 7 of diamonds, is that correct?
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Well, here it is. A penny for your thoughts. Put it in your purse. It will never be empty. Now, think stop is a trick I choose to illustrate how to justify this relatively odd way of picking a card. Now, you might want to go back to the presentation and look at the whole thing, because there you get the timing exactly and how the elements flow into each other. Briefly, let me comment on it. I open by saying I would like to have you think of a card, which of course is a very free way. Now, I reduced this a little bit by saying, of course, there are cards people think more often than others, Ace of Hearts, whatever. And there are, of course, people in the audience at that point who will say, that's right, I would have thought of the Ace of Hearts. So that justifies the transition to the next step, which is, I think, a good idea to refer now to the playing cards as 52 potential thoughts. So that changes the perception. The spectator mixes the thoughts, and now I go up. And the first thing I do, rather than getting the cards directly into the peak grip, I get them at the fingertip position like that and just flick through, saying that this way you can think of any card you see, also improbable cards. Now I need to get from this position to the peak position. So how do I do that? I introduce a little humorous remark. Yes, by saying the eyes are the mirror of your soul. The moment the spectator reacts, the attention goes a little down. I accompany it with a gesture, which is the dribbling of the cards, and automatically the deck falls into the required dealing position. And now I can approach the spectator, and in a little lower voice, because I don't want to make this too obvious, I say, and you just say stop whenever it pleases you. So you can see how we got to the think of a card. We transited step by step to the relatively restricted selection of just say stop. Okay, and now here we proceed as taught in the technical chapter. I obtain a break beneath the card. I shuffle it to the bottom with the post-peak overhand shuffle control, and I might keep it in a second shuffle on the bottom. Now in our case, it's going to be the Queen of Spades. Now, in different ways I can proceed. I can either cut the deck and put it stepped on the table, or I do overhand shuffle, where I shuffle off half the deck, in jog, the top portion, leave it on the table, whatever. What I want here is to have a little positive insertion between the moment the card has been thought of and the moment I'm going to reveal the card. So at this point, I spread the cards. And of course, I have the break under the thought of cards. So when I reach the break, of course, I know this is going to be the thought of card. In our case, it's the Queen. And I stop and I said, oh, that's why I hear you think stop. That's your card, and when I take it out and throw it on the table, I name it because I can see it. I say, and it's the Queen of Spades. Overall, it will look as if I had divined the thought of card and knew when she thought stop. You know, if you want to do this even more convincing, well, you have to glimpse the card. It's a chapter that's going to talk about a little bit later, but just I will mention it when the card has been brought to the bottom with a peak. Remember, I shuffle it, put the deck on the table, and when I start, just before I start spreading the cards, I riffle up at the break so I can see the card the spectator looked at, and I know it's the Queen of Spades. So when I stop, I can even announce it, and then throw it on the table. In the force, we are going to make the spectator take the card we want. Let's look first at a very simple force, which is very effective, and we call it the crisscross force. The crisscross force, the spectator, deck is maybe shuffled, the spectator is asked to cut the card, we put the lower packet on top of that, and we give him this card, which apparently he cut to. Now, done in this way, it will fool a few people some of the time, but never all the people all of the time. So let's see how to do this in a clever way. First of all, it always helps to shuffle the cards so the spectators don't think that there's any arrangement in the deck. I'm going to use the Ace of Hearts here on the top. After the shuffle, it's perfectly acceptable and logical to have the deck cut. So I ask, please cut the pack. Spectator cuts the pack, and I simply comment, let's, or mark it here, or here. It's not necessary to make more comment. This packet can be put in any type of position over the other, as long as it's distinctly different. It's important to introduce a little pause. Arturo de Ascani always distinguished between a positive insertion, that's little pauses that do help to make a slide more deceptive, and negative insertions which should be avoided. Negative insertion will be if I have a card selected and then I start telling a story which probably makes the spectators going to forget the card and then reveal it. It's much better to move the explanation, the introduction or whatever, the presentation to the before having the card selected, then have it selected and proceed to the revelation. So avoid negative insertion. Here we need a positive insertion. We need that the spectator forgets exactly in which way the deck was cut. Now we use a verbal and also a body language strategy to further help the deception. When I go back to give the spectator the top card of the lower barrel, I say, the deck has been shuffled, I repeat the gesture I have done before, and it's true, the spectator remembers. Then I immediately go to the deck, and in the air, I repeat the action, I say, and you have cut. And what I really do, I do this gesture, which makes the spectator believe that he really cut this way. In reality, you remember, the packets have been inversed. But since it's true that he's cut, and it's true that he did this action, he will readjust his memory he has about this action. Now, we can proceed in different ways. You can ask the spectator to take the card. You can give it to himself. The important thing is, if it's possible, if the trick allows it, to replace the cut-off portion on top. So that will reinforce the fact that the deck was cut in the first place in this manner. That's a crisscross force. It's a very effective force. You can also, in the crisscross force, force one or several cards, or by having more cards, of course, on top, or by asking the spectator to take the bottom card and the top card, or just having to take the bottom card. Now, in an instance that you're not allowed to disclose the back of the card because maybe there is a message on it, maybe it has a different color, to do it that way and then ask him to take that card will effectively achieve the purpose. Another force which is often referred by the name of the cut deeper force comes from the creative mind of a gentleman whose name is Ed Balducci, or the Balducci force. And here is how the procedure looks to the spectator. We ask a spectator to cut a little packet and turn it face up, put it back. We ask another spectator to cut a little deeper and turn it back, and then we say, let's take the first card that is face down, and that's going to be the fourth card, our ace of hearts. Now here's a way of making this elegant. First of all, make sure that the spectator does exactly what is required to do. So it can be done in a demonstration moment. In this instance, I have the fourth card second from the top, so I have an indifferent on top. And I go through the procedure briefly for the spectator to say, in just a minute I'm going to ask you, sir, to cut a little packet, so you may do it like that. Of course, I have no idea which card you're going to cut to. To really make it random, please cut another packet. Yes, again, I have no idea which card you've cut to. Let's see, let's look at the card afterwards that is not visible, you cut to. And that's going to be your indifferent card. Now, you can take this up, sweep up everything else, and the fourth card comes to the top. Not only has this exactly demonstrated how the procedure is, so minimizing mistakes the spectator can do, you have also cleverly delivered the fourth card to the top. Now you may think about different ways to justify why the deck should be cut in this particular way. And there are different ways of doing. For instance, you could ask a spectator, now please take your left hand, which is closer to your heart, and turn over a packet, and then take your right hand, which is closer to your brain, and turn over a packet. Or you can ask a lady to do one cut and the gentleman to do one cut. So there are different ways you can stage and justify this procedure and get to a very efficient and at the same time very easy to do force. There will be more forces in other chapters, and I mention them as we come to them. Card magic is very interesting discipline because it's hundreds of years old. 1371, we know of the first deck of cards. 1371, that's very old. So in the meantime, hundreds of people have come up with beautiful ideas. They have transferred the idea to the next generation and so on. But there has been, an evolution, of course, in magic. Like hundreds of years ago, a magician would shuffle the pack like that and say, Ruth, please take a card. Now we don't do this. The modern magician goes a step further. Yes, he says, think of a card. Actually, most people will think of the ace of hearts, so I don't want you to act under such restrictions. So let's make it more difficult. There are 52 cards, so I'd like you to think of any number for 52. Maybe, so it's not too long between 10 and 20.
11.
What? 11? Good. So I'm going to count 11 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Do they do exactly what I'm saying?
Yes.
Good. Now, hundreds of years ago, they would say, please, Anna, look at the 11th card. Now, they don't do it nowadays.
Okay.
It's more sophisticated. They say 11 is not a magic number, because it has 2 digits. Magic numbers only have 1 digit. I didn't know until recently. I'm told, yes. So we need a 1-digit number. Let me see. 11. 11 is 1 and 1. So it's 2. That's an easy one. Good. Had you said 17, more difficult. Because so I'm going to count 2 cards. 1, 2. Had you said 17, I would count 1 and 7, 8 cards. So it would be another card, right? Good. Please look at the card. Show it to everybody at home. Show it to Ruth, please. Don't show it to me. Good. I put it back. Good. Great. Now, in former times, well, I'm going to shuffle the cards even to make sure. In former times, they would have tried, you know, to look through the deck and find a card. Now, we don't do this nowadays. No, we go one step further. We divine the card directly mentally. Yes. You think of the card?
Yeah.
Yes. Wait. I got it. It's a black card. It's not a red card. It's not a club card. It's a spade card. It's a very high spade card. Am I correct?
Yep.
Yes. Ace of spades.
That's it.
Good. Very good. Now, at that point, you know, in former times, we would stop and people would be astonished. But nowadays, we have sophisticated audiences. They say, that's curious. So we go one step further. Yes, we're going to try and find out where that ace is because it's somewhere lost in the pack. So how do you find a card which you don't know where it is?
I don't know.
I have
Well, you
no
call
idea.
You call them like a person. You call the card by its name. So it's, what was that? Ace of spades? Okay, well, I call it. So I spell the name, you know. Ace, A-C-E, of spades, S-P-A-D-E-S. Ace of spades. Here it is. Correct?
Wow.
I mean, yes. Well, that's where they would have stopped normally. But nowadays you go a step further. You say, look, this is a spade card. Could have been a heart, a diamond, or club. I go over this and look, all the cards over here, they're all spade cards. And they're all arranged, look at that, in numerical order. But doesn't win you a game. So that's why you go over here even a step further and you have all the aces.
Cool.
Wow.
Well, in former times, I mean, you would stop here. But nowadays you go a step further. Yes, I'm telling you. Look, Ruth, I'm going to ask you, please say stop whenever it pleases you.
Stop.
Stop. I'm going to cut here. I'm going to put the card over there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes? They're all the cards. Different cards. It's not the card, it's the artist. If you want to win, the best hand at poker was that. Oh, I know. It's a royal flush.
Wow.
That's
Spades.
amazing.
Well, you know, I think even nowadays we cannot go further than that, so we stop here. Further than that is the very clever conception of Canadian amateur magician Stuart James. Now, it does require a little setup. That's the price to pay. There's always a little price to pay. And please follow along. It's very simple. First, we have the spade cards. In our case, it's the spade cards from 2 to 7. Followed by 4 aces. The order of the aces doesn't matter except for the last, which has to be the ace of spades. That's the ace we are going to force. And then it's followed by another 4 cards, which make up the 4 cards together with the ace of the final royal flush. Okay, all of that goes on top of the deck, and as you could see in the performance section, we use in-jog control to keep the order and the position of the top stock. So the reason I picked this trick is not only is it a good trick, but it also illustrates a force that I didn't explain in the technical part, which is a force referred to as a 10-20 force. Now, it's a force that normally you will have to say to the spectator, please say a number between 10 and 20, which of course is quite suspicious. What kind of restriction? I apply a similar procedure, a similar psychology as you already saw me do in Think Stop. Yes? And that is that I start by saying, I'm going to ask you in just a minute to think of a card. It's important that when you use this ploy, as I used it before, that you tell the spectator in just a minute. Because if you say, please think of a card, some spectators will immediately think of the card, and they don't get it out of their heads, and then afterwards they will think that card rather than the one they need to think. So it's good to say in just a minute. And then I will use the same strategy used before by saying, oh, most people think obvious cards, so let's do it differently. There are 52 cards. So that's the step that will lead me to the number limitation. There are 52 cards. So you could think of any number between 1 and 52, actually not to make it too long. Let's make it between 10 and 20. Okay? So you see how step by step I get to that point rather than going directly up to the spectator and say, name a number between 10 and 20. So regardless of what number the spectator names, as long as it is 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 or 19, this force will work. Let's go through it, for example, thinking 12. So I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now if you look at your cards, you will see that the ace ends up, in this particular example, the third position from the top. Now I have to lead to the next step, which is, if it's not done well, obviously mathematical. If you say, okay, now let's add 1 and 2. So I have introduced a little piece of humor at this moment, and I say, but you know, magical numbers, of course, are never are 2 digits. They're always 1 digit. So 1 and 2 is 3. So a little humorous way, you watch the presentation again, because there you can see the good timing. And so I count down 3 cards. And it was very important at this point that I emphasize, had you thought of 17, I would obviously count more cards, in this case 8, which is very misleading, because it would work the other way, because you would have another number of cards and another arrangement, of course. So in any case, in each case, the spectator does get the 4th card, which is the ace of spades. The cards are replaced, go back on top, and now I do another in-jog shuffle to retain the top stock. Well, from here on, the whole thing is self-working. Actually, the whole thing from the very beginning is self-working if you accept just the in-jog control. So I divine, that's the first effect, the card mentally. Then I spell it out. So remember, we do have 3 aces, and then we have, yes, the flush sequence in spades following. So I spell A-C-E on one side, and spades, S-P-A-D-E-S. Then I resume saying ace of spades, you know, to justify that I'm turning over the next card and not the last card of the deal. So it's a little positive insertion. So ace of spades, here it is. And I throw it center stage. So then, following the presentation further than that, I reveal all spade cards. As usual, it's a good idea to place the cards in such a configuration that the spectator can see both indexes, so they are not standing on their head. And next effect are the 4 aces. At this point, on top, we are left with the cards that will complete the royal flush together with the ace of spades. Now, as far as we've gone now in the course, we would use the crisscross force to force the spot. I used, if you watch the presentation again, a different technique, which is going to come a little later, also to whet your appetite. It's the riffle force, where I go like this. Spectator stops me at some point, and I somehow manage to get to this point where the royal flush is sitting. So as I said, in this case you would use the crisscross force like that. Just resume in 3-4 seconds what has happened until now, because we need a little time delay here,